or else I'll be like.
Hey, welcome to Let's Talk Chuckwagons. Mike LaBelle along with Ray Croteau Jr. And it's all brought to you by Limelight Audio and Media and Cinch Oilfield Hauling, along with our friends at Highwood Distillers. And it's just you and me tonight, pal.
I guess I should pay attention when the live button comes on, and I'm not flapping my lips when about something before I catch it. Yeah, just you and me. Just you and me.
Hey, it's all good at the end of the day, and a busy weekend in chuckwagon racing. And kind of this is the quick turnover, if you will, going from one show to another. And Dawson Creek starts early. We'll get to talk about that. But just like every other show, this is my favorite part because it's story time with Ray, brought to you by Highwood Distillers. And I'm never quite sure what you're going to say.
Well, this one's brought to you by Grand Prairie Stampede, I guess. And I've been trying to remember the name of the bar that sponsored me. It was a big bar. Anyhow, this is probably my second or third year on the tour, the WPCA tour. So that goes back to 03, 04, somewhere there. Anyhow, so this bar sponsored me, and I decided, well, we better go down and see them. They want us to come to the bar and have a drink on them and get to hang out and enjoy the festivities. So we're downtown, and we all get a cab there and get into the bar, and we got a few drinks going, and everybody's feeling good. And I honestly only had a couple, and I'm not lying this time. And so at the end of the night, we're leaving.
Come on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm not kidding, because, well, my dad was on the tour at the time, and we were hooking horses the next morning, and I wanted to be in prime shape for Bert. So if you're not working when Bert's around, you're going to get a pitchfork in the ass. So anyhow, we decided to check out just about 1:30, just before close, and get out and try to get a cab early before everybody. We get outside, we're walking through the crowd, and at the time, there's probably 5 or 6 of us, and one of the kids that was helping me was underage, but he was with the group, so we snuck him in. He was 16 years old. Lo and behold, we're coming through the crowd, and I hear a screech in the back. So I turn around, and some guy had grabbed him and had him bent over a car, and his name was Jacques. And anyways, he ended up getting back on top of him, and he's stroking this guy, and this kid's only 16, and he's laying a licking on this 20-year-old. So I turn around, and then I see this guy come flying through the crowd, and he's about to hit Joke, from behind, right? Kind of dirty shot to get him off that guy's buddy. So I grabbed this guy. He had kind of hair about this long, and it was all curly. So I grabbed him as he was going by. Just grabbed him by the back of the hair, and kind of roundhouse right to the old frickin' schnout. I give him one right to the old snot box, right? So anyhow, it wasn't like 2.5 seconds. I get a tap on the shoulder and then push me over a car while at the cop. And I'm thinking, well, fuck. I've never been to the drunk tank, and I'm not even drunk. So he has me bent over, and he's pulling the handcuffs out, and I just said to him, I said, hey, I'm not drunk. Just put me in the car. And he kind of looked at me, and he hesitated, and I'm like, no, seriously, I had 2 drinks, and I'm on my way home and looking for a cab, and my buddy got jumped, so I turned around to help him. So the whole group sees me get thrown in the car, and the car go away, and they figured, oh, Ray's in the drunk tank, and Bert's going to be mad. And we're hooking horses tomorrow, and Ray's not going to be there. So anyhow, they take me down to the station, and on the way there, I'm talking to the cop, and the cops, he realizes that I'm not intoxicated and I'm not being rude. I was just trying to help a buddy out in the middle of a, big crowd. And the reason the big crowd was there was when we walked out, there was 2 girls fighting. And it was pretty good entertainment. So we kind of stopped and got a peek of it. And then it must have, that trend must have traveled through the crowd and everybody wanted to get a little feisty. So anyhow, got back to the cop shop. The guy brought me in, took my statement, and he calls me a cab. He called me a cab. I was back to the grounds before everybody that I was at the bar with. They were an hour behind me. So I'm at the campers at Stampede grounds, and I'm like in bed for an hour. So I hear these drunken fools all show up, and they're all laughing and talking, and then they realize my boots are on the doorstep of the camper, and they come in and they're like, "How in the heck did you get home?" So, anyways, there's it's good not to be hammered all the time and piss cops off. Sometimes you get away with it.
Hey, it's okay. Not all superheroes wear a cape, so that night you were the superhero.
Yeah. You betcha.
Oh, it's good. It's good. Well, like I said in the opening, we are in that week where guys go up to Dawson Creek, and that's always kind of a long haul. Why don't you talk a little bit about that transition, going from one show to where a show starts really early in the week?
Yeah. So this year they're kind of fortunate because Bonnyville, just the way the schedule was all mixed up, but Bonnyville was scheduled before Dawson, and it's not as far of a drive. It's maybe an hour and a half shorter, but typically they're leaving Strathmore on a Monday night even. Well, we raced Monday afternoon. When I left, I'd leave Tuesday morning at about 4, try to get loaded, and head all the way up to Dawson Creek in one shot. So, it's a 10, 12-hour drive from Strathmore, and everybody's tired. It's the end of the season. It's starting to wear on you. Horses are tired. Dawson Creek starts on a Wednesday, so the turnaround was brutal. I hated it. I hated the drive. I still kind of get chills to my bones thinking about it. So, guys are in transition from Bonnyville up to Dawson Creek. Most of them should be there by now, I guess, and then they'll have tomorrow morning to kind of get ready and everybody get the kinks out and loosen up and then get ready for the races Wednesday night.
No, and it is the quick turnaround. It's kind of if you want to say the long haul or the iron lung of the Chuckwagon season, that's the one it is. When you make that quick change, what do you have to do differently with the horses?
Well, you try to strategize your last couple days in Strathmore. So if you can give an outfit off the last night or even 2 nights, so they have 2 days resting in Strathmore, and then you have that long haul, which that long haul is basically probably like 1 or 2 races is what it takes out of them because they're in a truck for 12 hours. Us as humans, we can stop, we can go to the washroom, we can eat and drink as we please. If you need to take a 20-minute little break, you can. The horses, you do stop probably 2 or 3 times and give them, 20 minutes, half an hour to stretch and, take a pee, but they don't get to eat, they don't get to drink. So it does take their toll on them. So if you can manage what you're hooking that last night or 2 and give those horses the time off, and hopefully you get the right redraw where you get to Dawson, you can just hook those ones that have been kind of resting for you. So I cussed about these dates, and it's hard on the crew, and it's funny that more people haven't fallen asleep behind the wheel, or gotten in an accident or things like that. Years ago, Herman Flad actually got in an accident on the way up there, and that was his last drive. So he was fatally injured in a truck wreck, and that was on the way up to Dawson. So we were hoping that they were going to change the schedule a little bit to try to accommodate a little bit more safety, but unfortunately they weren't able to do that. But guys are still able to just manage it and have a co-driver, somebody else to take a trip in or drive in the semi, or even with the campers, hired hands. They're pulling and driving trucks too, right? So hopefully there's 2 of them that are capable of driving a vehicle and they can take turns. And it just comes down to management and your crew understanding how long of a drive it is. And to be prepared a couple days prior. So not like going out partying Saturday, Sunday, and then have to drive, Tuesday morning early when you're still tired and worn out from all the fun. So yeah, it's I don't like it, but we got to do it to be there and meet the commitments, right?
Now, I'm going to change directions a little bit because we've talked a lot about different hired hands and different people. You've had work for you, and some of the guests we've had, guys that have worked for them. How does someone become a hired hand in the barns?
Yeah, that's a good question. Typically, there's a lot of guys that just look on their Facebook or they'll post something and try to hire that way. Or it's, family members, their kids that are signing up to come for the summer, things like that. Kijiji, it's the same kind of job posting, but it takes, you're kind of looking for somebody with a little bit of horse knowledge. You don't have to be a pro by no means, but if you can lead a horse and, be around one, you'll be able to learn everything that we do pretty quick because we have a routine. And honestly, I like getting somebody that's a little bit greener because they learn the way I do it, and that's the only thing they know. So they don't ever differ from what they know and what they think they want to know, or they don't start telling me how to do things type of thing, right? So yeah, it's a young kid sport. I've had some older guys come and work for the summer too, and it's not bad, but usually the young kids like to come. They're right out of high school, and then the real good ones, they'll come for a year, maybe two, and then they're headed to college or university to start their career. So it's kind of just a fun summer, touring and racing and hanging out. And then there are some that continue on and they'll stick around for 5, 6, 7 years, right?
Well, and let's be honest, this is not a get rich quick scheme working in the barns, that's for sure.
Yeah, a lot of guys pay $2,000 to $3,000 a month, and you're typically your room and board's included, so you got somewhere to stay and food supplied. I usually paid a little bit more, and they fed themselves just because I had kids or other people to worry about, and just it got to be too much, right, for your significant other to be cooking and cleaning for 6 or 8 people every day. So I like having 2 hired hands if you can afford it. You just can get loaded and unloaded and set up a little bit quicker, more efficient. You got somebody to take out riding horses to the races and stay there with them, and then somebody to stay back at the barns to help you hook. And then, getting equipment down the road. There's always, I've never been able to get away from having, a semi and 2 trucks pulling, a camper, and then usually a camper for the hired hands and a wagon attached to that, or however we, seem to jig it. But I don't know. It just takes three units to get down the highway and, make it comfortable and efficient for everybody.
Now, you're heading out on the road. You got all these people. You get to a town, let's say, like Dawson Creek, Bonnyville, High River, one of these smaller towns. What sort of money would one of the drivers spend there? They get into town. Is it groceries, fuel, everything there, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's pretty unique, and it's a big economy boost for the town when the wagons come in, because there's 36 drivers, and there's probably 5 to a crew typically on every crew, and then they're all buying groceries, buying fuel, going shopping, and then everybody lives there for the whole weekend, right? Where you talk about a rodeo athlete or somebody that's in for the perf on a Friday night and they do their thing, they rope, they might grab a tank of fuel and a burger and then they're gone. So that influx of money into the economy for your town is a lot greater when it's with the wagons, because we basically turn whatever town we're into our home for that week, and live there and support the farmers, because we're buying grain and hay and straw, and our mechanics and tire shops are usually getting used a bit, and just keeping things tuned up and ready to roll to the next show.
Now, and it's the one thing when we get to muddy shows, I've seen it, you know all about it. One of the busiest places that people don't think about, but when you get to a town, that laundromat becomes a pretty busy place with all the people and trying to get everything clean for the next show.
Yeah, like some of the nicer, newer campers have the washer and dryers in them, but they're small. You don't do 2 or 3 pairs of pants, and you get on a muddy weekend like it was in Bonnyville. It actually rained there. If you could imagine, bring the wagons down and it rained for 2 days. So, yeah, you go through a lot of clothes. These socks and boots are all wet and muddy, and jackets are soaked. And you're trying to dry things on the warmer time of the day, or hang them in your camper and crank the heat up. So, um, but the laundromats, yeah, some of the best. There's a good one in Dawson Creek. There's a couple good ones in Strathmore. We always had that certain town where we'd have a couple garbage bags full of clothes and drop them off. And I was never one to sit there. I'd take a licking on the bill, but I didn't want to sit there all afternoon and wash stuff. So, if you get into like a dry cleaning by Dave's and get your stuff all pressed up and cleaned up, ready to go again, let me tell you, you feel like $1,000,000.
And, kind of contrary to what everyone thinks, the wagon drivers, the outriders, everyone that goes along with that, this is not a cowboy boot world.
No.
When you guys are driving wagons, you're typically not in cowboy boots for the most part, and the outriders aren't.
And I'm just not built for cowboy boots. Like, if I wear cowboy boots, it's to an event, or if I wear them in the morning, by noon, I'm an old man. Like, I can't walk. My feet are sore, my hips are sore, my knees are sore. Everything's buggered right up. So, if you see me, I'm typically in a pair of like sneakers or running shoes, or they're comfortable. They got some cushion. And in the off season, or even in spring training, like if I have a busy day on my feet, by noon I'll be switching to a different pair of boots because my feet are starting to get sore. And I don't know, I'm just a poor-footed son of a gun, but that's just how I am. And some days that are real busy, I'll wear 3 pairs of shoes, like 3 different pairs of shoes, because I don't know, I got to change to keep my feet fresh and everything like that. So
got to keep your toes happy. Exactly.
Yeah.
Now we're winding into what would be the latter part of the season. Do you do anything different with the horses? How is this the time when they get shot again? What sort of upkeep and maintenance do you do for the horses at this time of the year when we're going into the latter part of it?
Well, there's some fatigue starting to set in with horses, especially the guys with a little bit smaller barns. They don't, maybe they only have 6 or 8 good wagon horses, so they've been getting used, and hopefully they've had 3 or 4 new ones into the mix that can cycle out. Some horses, they get sore and they get tired, and that's just what racing and sports in general, that you watch any pro athletes, there's guys that get sore and get hurt, right? So that's the nature of the game. As for farrier stuff, years like this where it's really dry, the feet are really dry and really hard and they're cracking. It's hard to get a real nice, clean farrier job on them, unless you're, for myself, if I know I'm going to be shoeing for the weekend, or, and say in like 4 days I have a farrier coming, I'll make sure that wherever those horses are watering, it's wet on the ground. So then they walk in, their feet are getting some moisture and they're starting to soak it up. Just easier for the farrier to trim the hooves and pare out the sole and clean up the frog. It's a little bit softer and just does a nicer job. And then, the shoes, when it's dry like this, actually the shoes kind of wear out quicker than the feet get too long. So shoes are starting to, because it's on hard ground all the time, where if you're in a wet season and you've been running in the mud all the time, well, your shoes are hardly worn, but the feet are long, and you could almost retack the shoes on, but we never do. We just go fresh all the time. But yeah, things like that. And then you're probably getting into a little bit of chiro, a little bit of, different treatments for horses, because there's, just trying to patch them together and keep them feeling good and keep them running right. So we're pretty lucky. Most of the shows we go to, there's a veterinarian there. So if you need any, horses looked at or checked up, they can do that. there's a few guys that are chiropractors, and they kind of travel to the shows, and some do the southern shows, some do the northern shows, and they kind of cross over here and there. But that, just like us, if we throw our back out, or we, something's not feeling right, you go to the chiropractor, and all of a sudden you're standing up straight and you're feeling good again. You're feeling a little stronger. So horses are pretty much identical to humans. I kind of always reference that. It's like however you're feeling when it's pouring out and you're standing in the rain, that's probably how that horse is feeling. So he's not too impressed, but try to make him comfortable, try to keep him out of the rain or out of the hot sun. And yeah, just it's basic stuff. It's just people don't either have the resources or have the facility to keep them perfect,
No, and that's it. And I guess if I was to touch on one last thing, this is the time of the year. Your wagon's been through a bunch of races, and I know I got to come visit with you and Chance in Strathmore, and put my kids to work, which was nice for once. But it's one of those things that there's upkeep on the wagon, and I know you guys have to grease the wheels and make sure the weight's okay, and always scaling it and stuff. Yeah. How often do you go through that process?
Well, typically guys will grease their wagons before every race. So it's only like 2 or 3 squirts out of a grease gun, but it just keeps enough grease in there to keep the skeins and everything lubed up good enough. A lot of guys, about 50% of the guys will pull wheels every day and make sure there's no sand or dirt getting in. That's going to basically slow that wheel down and make it not spin as nice. On a dry year like this, there's been probably a dozen wagons that their wheels are starting to dry out. So what it does is those wheels start to become loose, and the spokes are loose, and the spokes where they tie into the fellows, which is just above the steel around the outside of the wheel. There's a tiny little gap there, and it could just be like, an 1/8 of an inch, but it's enough to make that steel want to move on the tire or on the wheel, and then it affects the wood, and the wood starts to just show some wear and tear. But so there's guys, they're either taking those wheels off and sending them to a wagon builder or a wheelwright, and they're shrinking that steel so that they're tight on there again, or a lot of times in the season you don't have time for that. So an example was Doug Irvine in Strathmore. He had one wheel that was loose, and he took it off after the race the one night and put it in a big water tub overnight, and the next day before race time. So it had 22 hours in a tub of water. So that wood had absorbed a bunch of water, and it expanded, and it was tight again. So that's a quick fix. A lot of those wheels will suck up a little moisture and tighten up again. But if it continues to be hot and dry, then that only lasts for a week or 10 days, and you're doing it again.
Well, and touch base a little bit on, I don't know that everyone knows that there's a weight restriction, or a weight minimum, I guess I would say, for the wagon. And how do you go about that process?
So it's 1,325 pounds with the driver in it. That's your minimum. You can be as heavy as you want. Obviously, that's not advantageous. Then there are basic measurements. So your wheel width from the outside of each hub on each wheel, the width of your stance of your wagon, and then the height of your stow rack is kind of a normal one to check, and then the length of your box and the width of your box. There's obviously some that I'm missing, but when we do inspections in the spring and weigh-ins in the spring, and especially when you get to Calgary, they kind of redo it, and then they've also got into NDT and some of the welds on the poles, and making sure that there's no cracks or any poor welding done. So that's a good process. And there's always things that are microscopic to the eye and you can never pick out, but you try to maintain the wagon good and keep it strong and healthy so that it's not going to fall apart in a race. But the odd day, you bang wheels and you break a spoke or two, and it's not very often anymore that spokes are flying, but back when I started, you'd probably lose 1 or 2 spokes a summer just because the guys were grinding on each other and going old school. But yeah, for the most part, the box almost needs to be replaced every 4 or 5 years, because just that rattling down the track all the time, wherever it's bolted or screwed together, it just starts to wear in those holes, and then it just continuously gets bigger and bigger. So outside of that, it's probably the wagon makers. They say, oh, their sales pitches, this is the cheapest investment is your wagon because it lasts the longest. Now they got their prices so up through the roof that it's not the cheapest investment, but
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Well, you know what? This has been great. I think it's good when we can catch up, and I can ask some questions that I've always wondered, and I hope other people have wondered. So, thanks for doing this. Thanks for joining me on It's T-Shirt Tuesday. You and I both got rid of our colored shirts today, so I guess I'm not sure why that happened, but it did.
We're slacking a little bit. We'll tidy up next week. Might even have a guest.
Exactly. We'll clean. Hey, that'd be fun. Well, you know what? We're going to cut it short. Thanks for doing this again, Ray. I want to send a huge thank you out to our sponsors, Limelight Audio and Media, along with Cinch Oilfield Hauling at Highwood Distillers. On behalf of Ray Croteau, I'm Mike LaBelle. Do us a favor. Drink responsibly, drive safe, give your kids a hug. God bless. We'll see you next Tuesday.